Yep, let's go.
Greetings and welcome to this segment of Theology Thursday. We have a hot topic this Thursday. What a hot topic we have this Thursday. We are talking about Little Nas this day. We're going to talk about Little Nas. We're going to talk about the video. We're going to talk about the shoes that he sold. I know a lot of you might be thinking, well, man, what are you talking about, Reverend Dockery? Who is Little Nas? What is Little Nas? Well, Little Nas is a rapper. And Little Nas has some shoes that they're going to tell you about that have been selling. They've been selling like hotcakes. And he had a video as well that we're going to discuss. I'd like to introduce you to the panelists today. First of all, we have Dr. Danielle Bahuro. We have Dr. Malcolm Small. We have Dr. John E. Jackson Sr. And we have Pastor Kim Shelton. And I'm Reverend Charles Dockery. And we're going to start this discussion. Thanks for tuning in. The floor is open, folks.
Well, well, first of all, let me just say this whole idea about him being a rapper is kind of like this. That's coming from a hip hop head and a hip hop pioneer. So I just want to say that.
I agree. I told Dr. Bahuro the same thing. I got lost in the 90s. In the 90s, I stopped in the 90s.
Yeah.
So that's rap and that's hip hop.
But Lil Nas X, as he's known, is a rap entertainer, let's call him that, who is the Old Town Road performer. He performed the song Old Town Road, which took off and has had crossover success everywhere. And Lil Nas X combined with an English company and an artist, an English, I guess you would call him an expression artist by the name of Mischief, or he goes by Mischief. It's spelled incorrectly, but he goes by Mischief. And they put together what they called the Satan Shoe. And the Satan Shoe has, although it does have Luke chapter 10, verse 18, 18 on the side, which the text says that he replied, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." He has that etched in on the side. There is some, there's a pentagram on the top where the laces are, and there is red paint in the gel of the sneaker. And each sneaker has one drop of blood according to Mischief in the article that I read. The artists from his company, each one gave some blood to this, project. And so there's one drop of blood in each paint in the sneaker, in the sole. And Lil Nas X is endorsing this, and it kind of took off, which is probably Lil Nas's plan to have this take off, to get this kind of publicity and everything. But then what happened a couple days after, or shortly after, it posted, I believe on YouTube, Lil Nas's apology. And if you clicked on Lil Nas's apology, the new song, Montero, I believe it's called, his new song, his new track, Montero, which has, which I guess what could be argued, satanic images, some sexually graphic moves and some stuff on there. And there is a place where Lil Nas X, who plays all the characters, incidentally, everybody in the video is Lil Nas X, and there is some explicit behavior or some sexual things that are done with Satan, with the image of Satan, I should say. And as a result of it, people were trying to be outraged about that, because it really didn't turn out to be an apology at all, just a promo for his video and his stuff to come out. And at the end of this video, he snaps or breaks Satan's neck, and then takes his horns and places them on his own head, as a you know, culmination of all of these things. So people have been or professed to be disturbed about it. There have been political officials and religious officials, of course, who have had a lot to say about it. There are people who are not as theologically progressive, let me use that term, theologically progressive, who have taken wonderful offense to this. There are those who have been fans of Lil Nas X because of the Old Town Road stuff, who have now talked about banning his music and not supporting him anymore. And the reasons we don't know, other than he did mention, and I think this is part of our discussion today, he did mention that he did this because, and he was kind of glad that um, the religious community was angry about it, because he had grown up being, an outcast because he is a same gender loving person. Matter of fact, let me just read real quick what the article said. Um, he says the day after Lil Nas X released the music video, he responded to the backlash over its rebellious religious imagery. He said, I spent my entire teenage years hating myself because of the expletive y'all preached would happen to me because I was gay, he wrote. So I hope you're mad. Stay mad. Feel the same anger you teach us to have toward ourselves. So, in regards to the Satan shoe, in regards to whatever kind of statement that he's making, it warrants, or it has brought about. I'm not going to say warrants because we could talk about a whole bunch of stuff on Theology Thursdays, but it brought about some conversation on this Theology Thursday today. So, as my pastor who's gone home to glory, my childhood pastor used to say, so beloveds, what is your thoughts on this?
I just want to add that you read his life, part of what his life. He, you know, more than calling him a rapper, he's a Twitter phenom. His his inroads to popularity came because of his social media technology and Twitter in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And so even with getting Old Town Road out there, it was how he manipulated Twitter. He did some creative stuff that got him in a little trouble, but it still got him the popularity. So I just wanted to add that in before we get into the meat of it.
So, thoughts, ideas, hopes, dreams, fears. Say something. You gonna buy it? You're not gonna buy it? Do you like the move? Do you like the music? What? I mean, what is it? Are, are we afraid? Are we afraid to take a moral stance as proclaimers of the gospel here? Is that? Are we afraid to take a moral stance? Are we afraid to reveal position on this? I mean,
Gauntlet is down.
What is it?
The gauntlet is down.
Right. What is it? What is it? What is it that pricks the spirit in this moment?
As someone who is same gender loving, I appreciate his message of inclusivity that he is attempting to promote as one who loves art and entertainment and expression of art and entertainment. I so appreciate his creativity. I am challenged, however, by a couple of dynamics. First and foremost, what are the ways in which I experience him as being capitalistic? In that, even though I appreciate his message of inclusivity and challenging the evangelical religious right for homophobia and transphobia that has existed in the church for years, and even though I appreciate his creativity as an artist, I am challenged by the fact that these particular shoes cost $1,018, and Mischief, MSCHF, decided just this week to come out with the I don't want to say the opposite brand, but the opposite brand called Jesus shoes. You could Google that. Now they're all white with red. They're all white with blue, coloring, and they have a dove on them, and there's a scripture that's engraved on the side of them that says John 3:16. That Mischief also just released this week. Guess how much those shoes are selling for? Those shoes are selling for in between $2,000 and $3,000. And there are people, the religious right, the evangelical religious right, who have decided in resistance to the Satan shoes that were released on last Friday, have decided to participate in spiritual warfare by going out now from the same company and now buying the Jesus shoes with the inscription of John 3:16. So
which have a drop of water from the Jordan River. That's what the profession is. They're in the soul, instead of the blood, there is a drop of water from the Jordan River.
And so my frustration, my concern, my issue, my challenge, my confrontation is, what are the ways in which religion, religiosity, religious terms are now being sources to promote capitalism and being consumerized to support capitalism in some sense? How is it a group of evangelical Christians would think that they are participating in spiritual battle by now spending double to pay for quote unquote Jesus shoes? Why is it a group of people would even believe that is how they should enter into spiritual battle by now participating in further capitalism is interesting to me. Number two, I take issue with, I have been doing research around social media. If you were to take out your cell phone right now and go to google.com, if you type in just two letters, S-A, immediately the Satan shoes would pop up. That's how many times people have Googled these shoes to either look at them, view them, or purchase them. Just hit SA and immediately Satan shoes will immediately be populated in your Google search. And so I take issue with the fact that this week alone, on Monday, we begin the Derek Chauvin case, the killer of George Floyd. And why is it Satan shoes are the hottest cultural or entertainment or big news story topic to talk about instead of this police brutality trial? And so I'm a bit concerned that now this is a distraction. Little Nas X selling of these shoes, this video, while it is promoting a particular topic around inclusivity and creative art, I'm also a bit concerned that it is now a political distraction from what I believe is other more pressing issues. Just like I said, we were so busy last week talking about Derek, gentleman, quote unquote, social media relationship expert,
Jackson.
who
Derek
cheats.
Jackson.
We were so busy talking about Derek Jackson that we didn't pay any attention to on Thursday. The state of Georgia, Brian Kemp passes a bill rolling back voting rights for African Americans in Georgia, making it now a law that you cannot even give food and water to persons standing in line to vote in Georgia for election. You can't vote now anymore on Sundays. There is no Bloody Sunday. So I'm just wondering, what are the ways in which these Satan shoes are now political distraction against us rallying around what's happening with this current Derek Chauvin trial. I'll pause right there.
Pastor Jay, would you mention, I think a good place to start, would you mention what you mentioned in the green room about if you're not from the, I think that'd be a good start. Because I mean,
start. we ain't been saying that.
We already started.
We ain't been.
No, in another direction we're about to get into. That's what I'm
just was
sorry.
garbage, huh? Okay.
I'm gonna say that, and then in the continuum of what we have already been doing, let it move on. Rev. Dockery is asking. I said initially when this began to hit the airwaves and all of that, I thought of the line from Stevie Wonder's song, "When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer superstition." And so I'm gonna leave it right there and come back to it. Somebody else can.
And the reason I said that, Dr. Bahura, you've been feeding some good nuggets, but I wanted to go into that spirituality and that battle between spirituality right now, between the so-called good and so-called evil.
And I so appreciate you mentioning that, because I think that we need to expand our vision of how we understand spirituality. Is not spirituality also looking at economic oppression and empire? Because it was in fact the reason during this Holy Week that Jesus was crucified is because of economic reasons, because he was taking money from religious leaders by performing miracles for free. That's why I appreciate Aubrey Hendricks' book, The Politics of Jesus, because in some sense, Dr. Hendricks promotes this idea that the whole Good Friday moment was based on economic oppression. And this is the real authentic reason why Jesus is crucified, because he was taking money out of the hands of religious leaders by performing miracles for free. People didn't want to pay their taxes anymore to Caesar. They didn't see the point of giving their money over to the church. They were saying no. And so in some sense, you had religious leaders saying, okay, we got to get this Jesus brother out of here. We got to kill him because he started to impact our economics. And so I do think we talk about spirituality. I do think it's important for us to think about what are the ways in which economics, capitalism is a part of spirituality in some sense.
There are, Martin King said, whether you want to call it Satan, the devil, Mephistopheles, Beelzebub, Sloopfoot, whatever you want to call it, there is the presence of evil. And I know for a fact that there are spirits, some good, some bad. And the Stevie Wonder quote for me illustrates that we live in a wicked society, and that society is the wickedness is illustrated, as Dr. Bahuro said, on how people are treated, and economics is one of the major vehicles to rob people of their souls. And so, but the other part to that is that, like in the scriptures, I think it's in Acts, there was the sons of Sceva, and they were practicing using the name of Jesus, and they didn't have no love for Jesus. They were just trying to get the tricks to get money as again, as Dr. Guru was talking about. And the demon said, Jesus we know, Paul we know, but who the hell are you? And they got their tails whooped terribly. And so my point is that we have a history in this country of folk who have monetary interests who are controlled by evil, evil presence in this country. They have no souls. Their souls have been sold out to devil, the Mephistopheles, or whatever. And some of them use the God we talk about name in vain. And you can't do that type of stuff. And there are not some consequences. There are spiritual consequences. And so, you know, this chasing after money, which I agree with Dr. Bahura. I think this whole thing is about money. I think Lil Nas X is using his abilities for marketing and Twitter to get followers, because American newspapers and media say it don't matter what kind of news it is, bad news, good news, as long as the news is about you, you're going to get paid. And he sold out to evil interests, and mischief is just showing we ain't got no God, but we going to get you all to play this game to put money in our pocket.
Well, the God is money, right? I mean,
yeah.
that becomes ultimately what it is. And when you look at the very definition of idolatry, the definitions is simply extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something, right? And so it becomes to the point of worship where it occupies your space, your behavior, and your mind. And I think, as a clinical social worker, I think of, I always go to the why. I'm always at the why of people. And I think, to Dr. Bahuro's point, that a lot of what we're talking about is because, we can sit here and talk about Lil Nas X. We could talk about people like Tekashi 6ix9ine, who are, media sensationalists and folk who, do things to draw attention and are opportunists and play that way. But I don't think we can do that without talking about the de-evolution of the spiritual sense of individuals. I don't think we can do that without really talking about, as a culture, what has shifted in terms of what has value. And we are moving away from, and we cannot minimize this enough. I mean, like, we can't really stress this enough. We are moving away from relationship and connection, community, and things of that have value in that sense, in terms of the individual. And we are celebrating a sense of individualism and selfishness and, self-aggrandizement and, self-promotion. And we've seen it for a long time. It has culminated, I think, with the last election, when we, the country, I say we as a country, elected somebody who had no moral compass, and everybody was good with it. It didn't matter what was done, didn't matter what he said, didn't matter what kind of behavior was put in place. It was, he was ignorant enough to say, I could stand in the middle of Park Avenue and shoot somebody and nothing will happen. I mean, there was no, you can grab them where you want to, you can do this, there was no, it was unscrupulous. And he was applauded and rewarded for it. I mean, we watch television, whether they're guilty pleasures or whether we are slave to them, of reality TV shows where ignorance is celebrated. It's celebrated. The more ignorant you are, the more famous you become. And there is no pocket of shame, right? I mean, remember when you could get shamed, right? Remember when your grandmother could say, I'm disappointed in you, and it would really hurt your feelings? right? Where somebody you admired could say that this wasn't right or this was the wrong perspective, and you took it to heart, right? That's not where we are. We're bold with ignorance. We're brazen with it. We celebrate it. We laugh at it. It's spectacle. And so the whole idea of what has value or what operates in the sense of core and decency literally moves out of the way. And folks have used this thing about freedom, and that could be a whole other conversation in and of itself. Folk can use this whole idea of freedom as an excuse for a lack of responsibility. Freedom doesn't mean you can do whatever the hell you want to do.
Like
Freedom
not wearing
means
the mask.
right, exactly right, or anything that speaks to being considerate about somebody else. You're infringing on my freedom. No, freedom means that you look at what your responsibilities and duties are and you make the right decision. And so I think our culture is easily manipulated, right? That's just easy, right? Let's make a devil's shoe, and then let's make a saintly shoe, and let's profit off of it all because we can sensationalize it either way. And the other thing I think, and which I thought about immediately when I read the article, is if and I'm saying this legitimately, and I don't mean any disrespect, if Lil Nas X excuse is legitimate, meaning that it wasn't a PR person or one of his managers or one of his handlers who told him to say that. If there is legitimate woundedness, right, from what the church has done, then how do we as the church examine that? How do we look at how we have eaten our young, literally, and cast them away or thrown them away? How do we wrestle with that idea? Because there are people who, and many times the reason people do not have this relationship or do not have what we call relationship, or what we understand as relationship, is because of their woundedness.
That was my same question too, Pastor Small. I was wondering, I was like, okay, well, we as the Black church, did we miss our opportunity for a Little Nas and somebody like him? Did we drop the ball, or did we turn him away, him and a generation or two generations away from the church? So now they don't believe in anything but themselves.
There's no center about that. I mean, we got a group. I mean, and not that this means anything like that, but we got a generation that, if it's not a wedding or a funeral, they don't enter a church. They don't enter a church. It was, you going to church because that's what you had to do. You ain't had no choice. Then it became, well, do you feel like going? Right? And then now it's not even an option.
But
right?
It's always been like that. This ain't nothing new.
Right, but I'm saying, but we have to ask ourselves why, right? As the people of faith, as the people who profess this, we have to say, well, why is this happening? You know what I'm saying? And we have to really look at, I think, for people like Lil Nas X. I mean, and let's be clear, it's not that we're asking Satan to steer the ship, right? I'm not saying Satan needs to steer the ship, but what kind of conversation do we really have with those who have been wounded or those who have stepped away? And what kind of message are we putting out that people can say they can deal without this because they feel it's irrelevant or it's not necessary?
I think that I think we're talking about two things, and this is one of the things that kind of gets at me about this conversation about folk wounded in the church and folk that don't go to church. There have always been people who didn't go to religious institutions because they believed in God outside of the institution. And that's just it. It got nothing to do with hurt. It just got everything to do with, I don't feel like being a part of an organization.
Not a joy.
Then there are those who have been a part of the institution who have been wounded. And so they are not there. So when we have the conversation about woundedness, let's have the conversation in a context that, we don't expect everybody to go to church.
Right.
Everybody's just not going to church. They had never been that way. Jesus' day, everybody wasn't going to the temple. They just weren't. And it ain't because all of them were wounded. Just a lot of people don't go. But then the other part is the church has wounded folk. So now, yeah, let's ask the question: how we have facilitated the wound, but not necessarily thinking that folk need to be in church even after the wound, after we figure out how they've been wounded, because there is the practice of the faith that is just not going to be in the building.
Right.
And I think we need to be clear about that and not act as if there was a time everybody went to church and all of this type of stuff. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It never has been.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know.
Right.
But there was a time, and we're not saying everybody ought to be in church, but there was a time, it seems as though the generation or the community tried to put the church into you wherever you were. So it's not so much that you had to come to church, but I guess I'm talking about family values or community values. And it seems like those are kind of disappearing now. And folks are more confused than they've ever been. So you said, if you're not from the ghetto, then I go to the ghetto. So I hear my man.
He ain't let that go, Joe.
I love that. You know, I hear my man though, Lil Nas. Okay, well, yeah, he's commercializing this and he's making money off of this, but I'm equally disappointed with the company who I think is kind of exploiting him, because he really does not know what he's doing.
Wow.
Doesn't know what the implications of what he's doing is. How many people he's drawing into this?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, like Lil Nas, this whole video, this theological piece he put together, and then I think about Kanye West's Sunday morning worship services that gathered more people that my church has seen in a year, that he was able to gather, that people were running to be a part of his Sunday morning worship services. And so there's a group of people out here that see church differently, that see worship differently, that see God differently. And so, yeah, some of them may go to some of the entertainers and worship with them, but when I look at Nas, it's just like, that was such an interesting video to me. Like, I was just kind of like, what are you saying? It seems like it's not a disconnect, but he's disagreeing, like having this conversation with the church, just saying, you put me here, and so I'm going to play this with the devil, right? Because when I came to you all, you put me out because of who I am. The devil don't have no problem about who I am. So now I get to dance with the devil. I get to dance with the devil, so to speak. And he shows him dancing with the devil. But even deeper, if we look at our youth, our young adults, our millennials, when they don't bring their authentic self, or when they do bring their authentic self, how open are we? How open are we? How open is the church? I mean, are we still fighting and condemnation of queer people? Are we still doing that? Are we still having issues with women in the pulpit? Are we still doing that? Are we still have issues about what people wear to church? Like, are we still having issues with that and making that God center and not the spirit or the souls? I mean, what are we doing here? And so he puts this video that was kind of, I say, exaggerated video, but if we just listen to what he's saying and what he's trying to implicate there, I may not like the way he did it, but what he's saying is there's an issue out here, and this is the alternative to probably something I desire. And so I'm not saying what he's doing is great or another way of doing it. I'm just saying people scream out in different ways. And so that was a scream out. He probably got a huge following, a couple of high fives on that because of the scream out for probably young queer people who have been excommunicated from the church or have been looked at differently. And so he gives this explicit video about what this looks like when they're doing that. But even that, after we get through the, oh my God, do we still bring Little Nas in? Do we sit down and still have a conversation with him? After we get through the shock of the video, can we still see the person behind the video and what is he trying to say? To scream out that his soul is trying to say what he's trying to say for the people. Can we bring him in and have that type of conversation about what, what his art form and what he was trying to say with all of that?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, Pastor Kim. Yes, I will say homophobia still exists in the church. Transphobia exists in the church. Sexism exists in the church. I have had some prolific, prophetic, phenomenal pastors say to me, Danielle, you're a great preacher, and I would have loved to invite you to my church for a Sunday opportunity to preach, but because you're same gender loving, you're going to hell when you die, I can't invite you. But I think you're a phenomenal preacher, and I would have loved to have you at the church. And so, I am a living witness that there is some opportunities that I have not received. There are some invitations that have been rescinded. When people found out, learned, discovered my own sexuality. And so, yes, I think that the church still has a ways to go when we think about addressing homophobia and transphobia. I continue to always say, in light of our Black Lives Matter movement, we have no problem with talking about George Floyd and making George Floyd's name become a viral hashtag on social media. But there have been 3 times, 4 times more Black transgender femmes killed in this country in the last 10 years that their names don't go viral on social media. Why? Because they're Black and they're transgender. They're Black and they're transgender. Today is National Day of Visibility for trans persons. That hashtag is not going viral on social media today. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you wouldn't know. But Black Lives Matter hashtag always goes viral. So yes, I do think that the church, Black church, needs to be held accountable for the ways in which the Black church has been homophobic. I continue to say a running thread that we need to watch is we don't mind the choir director or the musician being gay. We celebrate that. We all want to have a choir director that's gay because it's assumed that gay choir director, gay musician means that the music is going to be popping, the music is going to be phenomenal. But the difference is, let that same musician now say, I have a call to ministry and I want to preach behind the sacred desk. Oh no, you could stay behind the organ. You could stay behind that choir stand directing the choir, but you cannot now go behind that sacred desk. That's a whole nother conversation. Or I challenge, we have a lot of churches that claim to be open and affirming and will say, oh, I support LGBTQIA couples. And then I say, but how many LGBT couples have actually gotten married in your church? How many LGBTQIA marriages have you performed? Oh no, that's something totally different, right? We will say, oh yeah, I support LGBTQIA relationships and marriages, but it's something totally different when you talk about, well, would you do a marriage? Would you do a wedding ceremony? Could they get married in your church? And so I think the answer for many churches is no. And so yes, there is a lot of work to be done. And yet and still, even though I say that, at the same time, I have to say, yes, Little Nas should be brought in. But at the same time, is Little Nas also capitalizing on the oppression as well. Is Lil Nas X as this gay or transgender Black man who's trying to get this message out about inclusivity, diversity, equality, yet he is still selling a product for $1,018. And that for me becomes that makes me pause there for a second, because if it's really about the issue, if it's really about me addressing this issue, why then do I have to sell this product and profit from the selling of this product? No different from we've been hearing in the news media lately now, Black Lives Matter movement. We have now people coming under fire for being celebrity social justice activists. Sean King, Mallory. We have people now holding Benjamin Crump to the fire saying, okay, how many cases has Benjamin Crump actually won? 0, right? But he's the celebrity lawyer that everybody goes to defend their loved one who's the victim of police brutality. And so I do think we have to also ask Lil Nas X the question, this issue that you're claiming to draw attention to, are you yet and still profiting off of it? And if you are doing that, I think that's wrong. And we also need to hold him accountable for that too.
When we look at, and I think Pastor Smalls, I thought you were going there. And so I'm gonna try to go where I thought you were going. The country we live in is run by the media. Let's be clear about that. The fourth estate. Trump got elected because the media elected him. How so? He got more media attention free than any of the other Republican candidates. Every time he sneezed, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whoever else, they were putting the camera in his face. They gave him that platform. And what we found from, I don't know, what was it, the 40s or the 50s, when the word, whatever it was, the media thing that happened where people started killing themselves because they thought aliens were coming. I forget the name of the folk.
Richard Burr, yeah.
Yeah, and so there has been something in this country where the media, the folk that run corporations have been seeing how you manipulate and move masses of people. And it is being perfected in our age right now. Social media is a part of that. I don't care how much people like to connect with other folk, it's a part of that movement. And so every time, as Dr. Bahur was saying, when there is a serious situation like the murderer of George Floyd, now you got something else to diffuse it because we got 24-hour media, right? And so nothing is ever investigated, discussed, or analyzed thoroughly. They got 2.5 to 3 minutes to spend with each person. Then they move on. Why? Because they're flooding you with a lot of data and information to titillate you and keep you glued, but never to inform you. So now, Lil Nas X comes out with, this is why I'm not watching it. I mean, I'll read the article, but, and I wasn't even going to respond much to it because every time it is a manipulation of the media to get us to then follow this. Now, I'm not so certain that Lil Nas X is talking about church hurt. I think he's talking about society hurt. I know he said y'all been preaching this or that, but you don't find anywhere where he's actually talking about being a part of a church. He's talking about what the society does. And the society and the church is a part of the society. But the society in which he lives in is a society that is homophobic. And he's for me, he's talking about the society and not the church. I am not letting the church off the hook. I am not saying the church is not extremely guilty of this, but I'm saying as we begin to talk about him, we always gravitate, okay, the church put him out. Church ain't put him out. The society has hurt him. And people that claim to love Christian, who also are quite comfortable with putting profit over people, most of the people, the same folk, they're the ones he's talking about. And so when we start talking about the church, and then can we this or that, and I get it, and there are folk who have been hurt by the church, but I don't think this brother is the case. I think this brother is more the case of he is allowing himself to be manipulated for money. He had a Twitter following that was out of this world before Old Town Road. He is a master of the media. And so this is just another extension of that. I'm not saying that he has not had felt this hurt, but read his stories about himself. Okay. And so I think that this thing is about us getting to the point of not discussing what the real issue is for him. Now, in general, we got to deal better with how people have been hurt in the church and by the church and by people who claim Jesus Christ. That is a real discussion. But right here, $1,000 for some shoes, a company in Britain that he's connected with, and all the media attention he can look at. I just have an issue that that we're discussing what he's not discussing. I think we're speaking in a way that he is not speaking.
Mm. So let me throw this out here. So what then is the response, and where does it come from?
What response for what?
Is there?
Yeah, I think that's the other question.
So does the faith community have a response to this?
Or should they have a response?
Or should they even have a response to it?
I think they should. I think now is a wonderful time for the faith communities to look at their own sexuality and gender, because I don't think you can have a conversation about sexuality without also talking about gender. I think this is now a time for the church to have some conversations around sexuality and gender. Most definitely. But I think what will end up happening is most of the time the conversation is skewed back to just outrage around the video and imagery in the video. So no real substantive conversation ends up taking place, which becomes a bit, which becomes sad in some sense, which is why I wonder, even though I appreciated the video and I like the video for its artistic flair, I wonder what is the ways in which one could produce a video that has wonderful artistic flair and at the same time sparks conversation, not necessarily creates a shutdown of conversation or a dismissal of conversation. Even though I like the video for its artistic flair, if I'm really trying to spearhead a conversation to get someone from across party lines to see my perspective, I don't think that video necessarily produces that. I think that video is, to be honest, part of cancel culture, which is my challenge with cancel culture, because it doesn't spark interest in having conversation from across the aisle. It is the idea of, let us just be dismissive, let us shut down the naysayers from across the aisle, and that's it. And I don't think that we can continue to live in a society and teach and learn from one another with this whole spirit of, let me just give you something for shock value just to cancel you and dismiss you and not really enter into conversation with you. I also think, for me, from Lil Nas X perspective, I would have had a bit more respect if I would have known that you were charging $1,018 for these shoes and then creating LGBTQIA college scholarships with the money. I would have wanted to see what are the profits for of these shoes going to? Are they going to LGBTQIA legislative advocacy? Are you donating so much of the money to particular outreach that is specifically directed to LGBTQIA persons, or is this money simply going in your back pocket? And that's where I have some challenges, because how do I say I'm fighting for an issue, but yet I'm still profiting from it as well, if that makes sense? I'm against this new celebrity social justice activism of people who are becoming famous, saying they're fighting in this struggle, but yet at the same time they're profiting from it. How do you profit from the same thing that you're claiming to rage against? I don't understand that. And we have people that are doing that. We have social justice activists who are profiting from the struggles that they're claiming to fight against. And I find you to be no different than the oppressor.
Well, and see, that's the thread when we talk about response. That's the thread that I pick up. That for me is a hermeneutics of suspicion about what comes out in the media, and who is the one that is the prophet, so-called prophet, that is now telling us what needs to be done. I believe there needs to be a hermeneutics of suspicion, because even folk that claim, the church should do this and the church should do that, are not in the church, and not because of hurt, but not in the church, but are writing books and giving lectures. And I don't mind nobody making their money. I don't mind nobody, making their living. But it is also a manipulation of the media to hype up something so that then I can sit back and point my finger and tell other folk what to do, but I'm not going to get into the struggle to try to organize folk to do anything. And so as Samir writes, Tamir's mother has been pointing out that a whole bunch of people, and she's somebody that should be, first of all, she can say whatever the hell she wants to say. Her son was murdered. That's first of all. Second of all, she is saying something that is waking many of us up, because you go on an awards show, the oppressor. We ought to be boycotting award shows, first of all, because of the context is to marginalize us, but use us to entertain. And so we ought not be so wedded to that. But to then go on an award show where the empire says, now, talk about the empire all you want and get this money. So she's making a point that we need to have a hermeneutics of suspicion about folk who talk real good, but they're not helping to organize, like folk on this panel right now. I can say for each of you that you're organizing in your places of worship and things like that. But you can't say that about a whole bunch of folk that are writing books and giving lectures and telling folk what to do in the church. And they're saying the right thing, but maybe for the wrong reason, because it gets them attention and gets them money. And the media, the empire's media, allows for dissent. It will pay you for dissent. Come to my university, write your books and give your lectures, and the university is historically oppressive. Okay, so if there should be a response, the hermeneutics of suspicion of how the prophets of justice, many are saying the right, some, not all, saying the right thing, or those who make a video like Lil Nas X. I'm not certain that his intention was about his hurt. I'm not discounting his hurt. He obviously has been, but I'm not saying in this venue that it was about his hurt.
Yeah, I have decided that I'm gonna rage against my mom for always giving me spankings. So I'm gonna come up with some designer leather belts and sell them for $1,000 each to rage against my mama who would always give me a spanking with leather belt. And I'm gonna ask y'all to buy my leather belts with DB on them to sell these leather belts to represent the fact that I should not have been getting whoopings as a kid with these leather belts. I have a whole marketing scheme in my mind. And I'm gonna come out with a video too with my leather belt doing some stuff. Oh yes, it's real. It's real. It's real. Yes, right. That to me is the way that this argument sounds to me. It just sounds interesting.
But in the words of Nino Brown in New Jack City, it's the American way.
It's the American way.
Right. It's the American way. That if there is a way to find a niche for yourself to capitalize on that, then what do you do? And what happens with that? I think, to Pastor Jackson's point, he calls it the manipulation of the media. I think there needs to be, I know how this is going to sound, but I'm going to say it. There needs to be a level of discernment in the faith community about what needs to be entertained and what doesn't. Because some stuff we can just give too much energy to. And I'm not saying we don't have a position on it, but I'm saying how much do you deal before you give something energy, before you give something power, before you give something place. And it's so layered though, because the pressure is to respond, right? That's American, right? The pressure is to push back, right? You say something about my mama, I say something about your mama, right? You do something, I give response because I have a position and my position has worth, it matters, and all that other kind of stuff. That is the culture, that is the routine that we run. So we say, yeah, well, we gotta have a position. I'm not saying you don't have a position on it, but I'm saying how much entertainment, and particularly as it, and I'm seeing this through the lens, and I'm being totally transparent right now. I see this through the lens as being a pastor, right? I don't entertain everything. You know what I'm saying? I don't chase after every comment that somebody makes, or every rumor that gets spread. I don't feel the need to address over the pulpit every letter that somebody wants to write about what's going on and spread it around. You know what I'm saying? So now, it doesn't mean that you don't have a position about it, right? But how much energy, and that becomes the tension line, how much energy do you give to some of this stuff? And I think that's where I started, and what I tried to say early on, because people are so easily manipulated, they don't know what's important to respond to and what's not anymore. And, so everything. And let's not dismiss social media in that regard, right? Because social media gives all of us a platform, and we all become, I remember when I was serving on the Board of Adjustments when I was in Inglewood, New Jersey, and people would get up and they pound the table and they'd start waving their hands or whatever. I would always say to the people sitting next to me, I said, this is the Malcolm X, Martin King moment. Everybody got the syndrome where, I believe that what's about to come forth from me is going to be so monumental that we're going to change the whole movement. And it's like, no, it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to, just because you getting up there saying it with passion and fire, and just because you're making good points, doesn't mean that it's going to change necessarily the atmosphere of what's taking place. But because social media has given everybody a platform to be an expert, there it is. It's giving everybody a platform to be an expert on anything. You know what I mean? On anything, that what you have not studied, what you have not researched, what you have not thought about. You know what I mean? You can see it and then make a comment on it immediately. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So I think there's a discernment And we have to, I think it's important to, I do think it's important, and we didn't really talk about this part. I do think it's important to talk to young people about it, though. I think there's some place where we really do converse with youth about, particularly young. When I say young, I'm talking about young people. I'm not, about what is healthy. um, there need to be a conversation about what healthy looks like, um, and because what healthy expression is, what art is. I mean, I know that's interpretive and all those other kind of things, but I just see what you were saying, John. I just see it as, at some point we got to be like, this is a really marketing scheme. This is a real big tool. This is this is that, and be able to compartmentalize it in that way, and move in some different ways when we do it.
Pastor Small, where does that conversation start with your children, with your grandchildren? First of all, do you have the conversation? Why are you coming to me talking about buying $1,000 pair of shoes? Or why would you wear a pair of shoes with the blood of a human in it? Where does that conversation start?
I've listened.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, okay.
well,
Let me speak to the. Let me speak to the. I'm gonna
well,
defer. I'm gonna defer. I'm gonna defer to the mama
Okay.
who had the experience. I'm gonna defer to the mama who had the experience.
for me, the conversation, I didn't know anything about this. The conversation for me started when my 12-year-old son, Ezekiel, texted me, said, "Ma, can I buy these shoes?" And I said, he knew what to say, because he said, "Daddy told me I couldn't get these shoes. I'm coming to you, ask you, can I get these shoes?" I said, "Your father said no?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, then I'm saying yes, because I just like to go against his father for whatever his father said." And so he has figured that out at 12 years old. He's figured out that me and his daddy still be competing, every Christmas and every birthday, trying to one up each other on Christmas gifts and birthday gifts and all of that, because I'm trying to stay the good parent and make his father be the terrible, wretched, evil, bad parent. And so he asked me, he said, "Can I get these shoes?" I said, "Sure, let's get them. Send me the link. I'll cash app you the money right now. Let's go." And he said, "They even got this cool scripture on them." I said, "Oh, they got a scripture on them?" He said, "Yeah." I said,
He was selling. He was selling.
I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Let's get these shoes. They got a Bible scripture on them." I said, "Every time you put the shoes on, they got a Bible scripture on them." I said, like Ephesians chapter 6, make you feel like you're putting on the full armor of God. Your feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel. He said, "No, not that scripture, another scripture." I said, "Okay, well, it's in the Bible, so cool. It's wonderful." And then he says, "Here's something even cooler." I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're red and black." I said, "Well, I have to give a pass on that, because my favorite colors are blue and black, but okay, it's whatever." He says, "But," some of you will get that tomorrow. He say, "But,"
Yeah.
he say, "But the cool thing, really, Ma?" I said, "What?" He says, "They have one drop of blood in them." I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "The souls got one drop of blood in them. Is that cool?" And I said, "Whose blood?" He said, "I don't know. But if you look at it, you can see blood in it." I said, "Ezekiel, you cannot walk around with shoes that have blood in it." He said, "Why not?" And we got into this long conversation. I said, "I feel bad as an African-American person. Our bodies were sold just a few years ago in African enslavement. African enslavement was not that long ago. There's a sister. I sat him down and he said, "Oh God, I hate that I called you." I said, "Yeah, I know. Sarah Bartman." I immediately think of our beloved South African sister, Sarah Bartman, whose body parts were literally cut off from her buttocks and her breasts, and placed in jars and stood in a museum in the 1800s in France on display for people to see when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. One of his first acts was to have her body parts taken back from France, from this famous museum, and she was given a proper burial. And so for me, I'm reminded of, to me, we haven't even got into talking about what is the psychology of African beings, African children, African American children, African American adults walking around with apparel that has blood uh, entrenched in them. I think that should make us shudder for a second if we're thinking about our African history and how literally our body parts were sold during African slavery. That should make us tremble, I think, a bit, just thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation to have. I mean, I think a lot of times as parents, you don't even follow what. I mean, how many parents know who Lil Nas X is? You know, they may have heard of Old Town Road, but how many people know who Lil Nas X is, and how many parents are really following, you know, Satan souls, Satan shoes, whatever the hell they call. You know what I mean? So it you know, and what we do is essential as parents. So I mean, I think there has to be courage, and we got to be courageous enough to even initiate the conversation, to talk about, you know, what they feel about this and how they understand it. I have my own take on, you know, the generation and how they interpret things. You know, everything is allowed. You know, everything is good because nothing is threatening. Um, but if if everything is allowed, that means I don't have to commit to anything, right? And I don't have to take a position. So everything is allowed, because then if I have to take a stance, that means I have to defend it. So we do this, whatever you want to do. So we don't have to defend, which is ironic, because then we go on Facebook and Instagram and social medias and critique everything that everybody does. So it's a very vicious cycle as I see it. But I mean, I think it's a conversation you just have to have about independence and what it means to be a whole self. I mean, you know, the kind of work that Dr. Bahuro does, and getting people to see their whole selves, and really encouraging that in young people, and to embrace that's the kind of work that really needs to happen. You know, we can make conversations, is this a healthy way for Lil Nas X to do what he's doing? You know what I mean? You know, because, you know, anger can be a motivating tool, but, you know, what good, you know, right? That to me is always what's the end result, and does the end result produce good? You know what I mean? And, you know, we can be pious and hyper spiritual and say, well, does it give glory to God? You know, okay, but does it do good at the end of the day? And that's the question I think we need to ask.
You know, I think we're continuously facing the challenge of living on the same real estate as our oppressors. And what we're talking about is a community that is able to create a context of wholeness, because we are a community. And so when we have these conversations, we're talking, and Black folk may be listening, but they're not in communities. And social media is not a community. Again, it's a trick of the media to make you think you're liked, so you got all these likes. To make you think you got friends, so you got all these people. So you post something about your food, and you get all these people to comment, and it makes you feel good. But you don't have community. Right. It's not real. And now we dupe ourselves and say, "Well, I really got community because these people don't care about you."
Yeah, like my father says. My father says, you know, you got 5,000 friends and can't call one of them to get a ride if your car breaks down.
Come on, talk to me. And so what we're talking about as people of African ancestry, we are thirsting for community. And so in community, a healing community, these issues can be addressed. In fact, they can be headed off, so that in community, you know, we can talk to our children, and the whole community has conversation in it, because it ain't just my child. You know, I was, growing up in Chicago in West Chesterfield, which also Chatham for me. We had a community where, every time you turned around, it was just black folk. The corner store was black, all that stuff. I mean, and so we had a microcosm in some ways of what we're talking about. And I ain't talking about, you do something wrong, you get your butt beat, 4, 5 times before you get home. I'm talking about a community where people, were able to help grow something. And so we're missing that. And I think the answer is, how do we begin to intentionally, which takes some labor, create community? The church is one place it could begin, it could be the catalyst for it. But again, everybody's not going to come to that institution. How can we be in neighborhood and begin to create community so that people that are hurt, we can begin to help heal and help be whole? How can we do that? Because otherwise, we're talking to people, but they don't have anybody to connect with, because we live in so many disparate places. We're sharing the real estate with our oppressors, and that influence is more than we realize. And to break it, some of us are going to have to realize that America ain't so good, and I'm gonna stop pubbing for America. Now it's a place where I live, but I'm gonna stop trying to be, as Doc Rivers said, love America when America's not loving me. And begin to build community within this context that will help address these issues. Help us all of us raise our children, and not just, it's my child, don't you say nothing to my child. That's European. We'll stop right there.
If I could speak, well, I can. I'll speak to my son, who's a sneakerhead, early 30s, and we have a discussion about this. I would say, hey, this Satan shoe is $1,018, and it has a drop of blood in it. But do you really know it's blood? And has the marketing geniuses decided that the price of a drop of blood is $1,000? Then there's the Jesus shoe that has a drop of the Jordan River in it, and this shoe is $3,000. So the marketing geniuses say a drop of this Jordan River juice is $3,000. Do you really know it came from the Jordan River? And what it really boils down to, you had to be kind of affluent and kind of be rich to afford this, and because this is the thing to have. If you cannot afford it, now we have people in the poor community going to do, what are they going to do to raise that money so that they can buy this Satan shoe or this Jesus shoe? And the words of Chuck D and Flavor Flav would say, don't believe the hype.
Yeah. Like you started off, Chauvin's on trial. They're trying to vilify George Floyd. Voting Rights Act is being dismantled, disrespectfully, and boldly. Congresswomen from Georgia are getting arrested for knocking on doors, when people have broken windows and literally killed people, and still walking around scot-free. So there's a incredible contradiction. And the last thing we need to do is find ourselves, losing focus. There's a definite need to wrap our minds around some stuff and get involved and get into it. It's I don't know. I know we're wrapping up and everything, but I'm concerned, man. If this thing doesn't happen in Minnesota, the United States of America is gonna have a problem on their hands, man. Because the world saw this thing, and if they loophole it, and I'm not saying they can't, but I'm saying if they loophole this thing, you have deconstructed the last bastion of hope that the system can work for Black people. I mean, half of Black people already believe it don't, right? but those who still holding on to it and believe it in the Obamas and the Kamala Harrises and the, the process, let the process work. If you do this, man, we gonna have to really deal with something. So
Can,
Yeah.
can I add that? I really, and I'm glad you said that. The empire of America is falling now.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
And the Floyd case may be, just this other link in it.
Mm-hmm.
But where are we going to be when the empire falls?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's falling.
Mm.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this has been awesome. I so appreciate this conversation. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all letting a fella hang out with y'all, erudite scholars and theologues. Thank you so much for the opportunity for a poor preacher with a small church in a tiny town to come and hang out with y'all.
We got people watching, so I ain't gonna say what I really wanted. And the feces that hit the rotary fan.
Grateful.
Well, we thank you guys for tuning in for this segment of Theology Thursday. Hopefully you've been informed, but more than anything, hopefully you can take something from this and share something or add to this conversation with somebody in your circle. We look forward to seeing you next week, and we just ask that you have a great day. Peace.